Ladies and gentlemen and fellow practitioners. It gave me great honors and joys to introduce my old friend, Seng Hong Fasi or Venerable Dhammadippa. About 24 years ago, just when I became a monk, one day when I was up in my monastery in Lantau Island, then one of my Dharma brother told me, "Hey, Hongsi, there's a Guairo Wasa, a foreigner monk that came to the monastery. Why don't you talk to him?" Then we met, and we started talking, and it has been now 24 years that we met. And since that time, we have been keep communicating, and there's always seems to be a link between us. And I would not go through his CV and they tell you when he became a monk, how many languages he speaks, and you can go on the internet and you find all that information. But I will try to tell you something that you probably would not know. People ask me, who is this monk from Czechoslovakia? And I usually introduce the Venerable as, if you want a good example of a monk, 一個出家人嘅版 as example of a monk, then you can look for Venerable Dhammadippa. He is a good example of a monk. Now maybe I was wrong. Now I can say more. If you want a good example of a Bodhisattva, then now you can look for Venerable Dhammadippa. And the one I want to tell you is that you probably know that the Venerable is a very experienced meditator on the Theravadian traditions. But he's more than that. He's now working on Yogacara. He's using Theravadian meditation methods in practicing the Yogacara method of meditations. So he's combining the two, and I think hopefully we will be able to reconnect or revitalize the Yogacara methods of meditations. You are here to listen to the Venerable. I'll stop now. And so, Venerable, please, we are all waiting for you to.
So I will start a little bit in a traditional way by worshipping the triple jewel. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vinja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manusanang buddho bhagava ti swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko pachattang veditambo vinyuhi ti supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samici patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa pugala ese bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakhineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyakhetang lokasa Iti evang buddhang sarantanang dhammang sanghang cha bhikkhavo bhayam va chambitattam va lomahamso nahesatiti. So we have a very wide topic for this short evening. I will first start with the general, and then if time remains, I will come to more concrete. So generally, in order to understand the topic, we should mention the concept of feeling in Buddhism, which is in a way not quite the same as what we understand by feeling in the Western concepts. So those of us who study Buddhism may know that the feeling has a critical role to play in the process of liberating the mind. Actually, according to the Buddhist understanding, we find ourselves in the state of suffering, which is called samsara, which is called the 12 links of dependent origination. And this vicious circle of suffering actually can be broken only at the stage of feeling. According to the Buddhist concept, we happen to be in the state of suffering due to our ignorance and due to our will formations, either in the sense of merit or demerit, or of immovable mind in higher stages of samadhi. In all Buddhist traditions, to understand the process of suffering, we usually take 3 life cycles to understand it. So we came to be born in this body due to our certain meritorious inclinations in the past. And since we happen to live, we happen to receive the world. And according to the Buddhist concept, that which receives the world, that which is responsible for our experience of the world, that is precisely the feeling. In Indian tradition, the word feeling or Vedana is derived from the Sanskrit or Pali root vid, which means actually knowing. So it is receiving the world means, the Vedana means receiving the world in the sense of experiencing. Actually, the feeling is explained in Buddhism as the experience. We have the experience, therefore we receive. We receive through the 6 senses, which are our world. We do not know, unless we have had some realization, we do not know anything what is beyond the 6 senses. So all we receive in the world is through the 6 senses, and we receive it due to the senses touching objects. When the senses touch the objects, there appear the consciousness 6 kinds of senses, 6 kinds of objects, 6 kinds of consciousnesses, responsible for 6 kinds of touch, and we can only receive, very important if you want to understand the Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist psychology, all that we can receive, we can only receive through the touch. What we do not touch through the 6 senses, we do not know. So, this is very important principle to contemplate on. Ye dhamma nyataba, ye dhamma sachitakaba, te sabe fusitaba. All that we can know, all that we can realize, we can only realize through touch. When there is touch, we receive the world. And this reception of the world, in Chinese literally translated, shou or lingna, explained as ligna, this is our world. So, if we want to understand Buddhist psychology or Buddhist philosophy, it is very important to understand that point. So that is why the feeling at present decides what we are going to experience in the future. And the turbid feelings that we have in receiving the world, they are connected with our past experiences, connected with ignorance, clinging, or repulsion. So the state of suffering, according to Buddhism, has 3 roots, namely these roots. So we actually do not suffer due to the present feeling, we suffer due to the past feelings connected with ignorance, clinging, and repulsion. Very important to understand. So, the vicious circle of suffering in which we beings find ourselves is explained in Buddhism on the principle of, namely of karma, which is will, and sankhara, which is the mental formation based on will. This is the cause of the vicious circle of suffering in basic Buddhism. Now I am talking about what I call the basic Buddhism, not distinguishing between Northern and Southern Buddhism or Hinayana or Mahayana, but let's call it basic Buddhism. That is very important. Whatever Buddhism we study, we should understand the basic concepts, which are really not different in Southern and Northern Buddhism. They become eventually different through different interpretations of the same fact of dependent origination, which is in all traditions what the Buddha has actually realized under the Bodhi tree. So, the cause in basic Buddhism, the cause of suffering is to be traced back to karma. And karma is defined as a present will and the past will coming together. When we have will to do something now, it is because of our past the conditions of this vicious circle of suffering, they are then ignorance, clinging, and grasping. Ignorance, thirst, and grasping. Because of ignorance, there is thirst. And thirst for what? Thirst for feelings. Thirst for the reception of the 6 objects of the senses. This is explained in Buddhist teachings as the cause of our future suffering. Because we have thirst for the objects of the senses, we will cling to the content of our experience. And due to clinging to the content of our experience, we will create a new karma and a new existence. This is the concept of suffering in the basic Buddhism, which is common to all schools. And if we want to understand how to work with the feelings, we have to keep this concept always in the mind. Otherwise, we will be confused about all the Buddhist practices, which actually speak more or less about the same thing. How to receive the world with wisdom. If we receive the world with ignorance, we are bound to suffer. If we receive the world with wisdom, we can diminish our suffering and finally remove our suffering. The purpose of all Buddha's teachings is actually that one: how to remove suffering. And this is again common to all Buddhist traditions. Basically, this is the one and all-encompassing concept. The reason for Buddha Dharma is nothing else than to get rid of suffering. All other things are subordinated to this purpose. So we should keep in mind that studying the Buddha Dharma means studying the way how to reduce our thirst and clinging to the feelings, and how to open our mind in regard to the development, what we can call of positive feelings. Of the positive reception of the world, of positive touching of the world. Always we should keep in the mind that all that we know, we only know through the touch. We have to touch something to know it. And we know it in accordance to the concept related to our past. These concepts related to our past actually form our karma. So, whether we have the right view of the world, the wisdom to see the world realistically and act positively in the world, or whether we cause suffering to ourselves and others, depends actually from the Buddhist perspective how we use our feelings. In the Buddha's teachings, you find a very complex explanations of the work with the feelings. And in fact, for those who study Buddhism, you will find a very, very contradictory statements about the feelings. In some scriptures, the Buddha is teaching that all feelings actually are suffering. Yat vedaitam tam tat dukkasmin. All that we actually experience is suffering. In other scriptures, you will find the Buddha actually explain the process of liberation by experiencing the more and more subtle feelings. The more subtle the mind, the more subtle the feelings. According to Buddhist scriptures, you will find the principle that the mind, which is defined by its differentiating function in the world, differentiates what? The mind differentiates actually that which has been transmitted to him by feelings. And the feeling means either the pleasant sensation or unpleasant sensation, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation. Now you will find in the Buddhist scriptures also teaching that actually there are only two feelings, pleasant and unpleasant, and they determine how we differentiate the world, how we relate to the world. The neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling is said to be pleasant for the wise, but unpleasant for the ignorant ones. So, when there is neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling, the ignorant ones, they are either bored or searching for some pleasant feeling, but they can never stay in neutral feeling for a long time. It is explained in the Abhidharma, very wonderful explanation. The man in the world chasing after sensations is like a hunter chasing after a deer. So running after the deer, watching for his footsteps, he may have shot an arrow and hit him, so the deer is bleeding. So he chases after the deer to finish him. Now he comes to a place where there is a rock, so he can't see any footstep of the deer anymore. So what will he do? He will run around the rock until he sees again next footsteps. So the we deluded beings in the world, when we have neutral feeling, we search desperately for some other feeling until we find it. So actually in Buddhist tradition there are like several sutras, let's say, the Bahu Vedaniya Sutta in the middle collection of Buddha's discourses. There is a story of one very enlightened layman, the carpenter called Panchangika, who has an interesting discussion with a monk called Udai, and they argue the Buddha has explained whether the Buddha has explained 2 feelings or 3 feelings. One claims Buddha only teaches 2 feelings. The other says Buddha actually teaches 3 feelings. And they cannot agree with each other because they have both very good arguments. So let's go to the master himself and inquire about it. So what does the master say? Both are right. I indeed teach 2 feelings, I teach 3 feelings, and I teach many, many, many feelings. So the Buddha explains the path of liberation by experiencing more and more subtle kind of feeling. He explains when one has attained the first dhyana, first absorption into the object, then the feeling will be much more pleasant than whatever we can experience with the senses. The mental pleasure is much deeper than the pleasure through the senses. When we experience the deep states of concentration, we are, so to say, cut off from the influence of the senses, and we experience a very subtle mental pleasure which becomes higher and higher as the object becomes more and more subtle. So our mind works in this way. The more subtle the object, the more subtle becomes our mind and the feeling. So when we have experienced more subtle feeling, we can detach from the more gross feeling. Actually, Buddha also explains the principle of samsara or suffering on the principle of grossness, called daushtulyam or dutula. We are in the state of suffering because of the grossness of our mind and grossness of our feelings. And due to what is this grossness of our mind and our feelings according to the Buddhist concept? It is based on our holding on the signs of the objects, which is actually holding to the feelings, to the reception of the objects. When we hold to the signs of the objects, our mind becomes gross. When we do not hold to the signs of the objects, our mind becomes more subtle. So learning the meditation is actually learning by means of the meditation of appeasement and the meditation of insight, how to develop more and more subtle minds and feelings with more and more subtle objects, connected with more and more subtle perception and feeling of the objects, which is directly linked to the mind. In Buddhist teachings, actually, the perception and the feelings, they are called the citta sankhara, that which forms the mind. other mental factors, which are the content of our mind, according to Buddhist psychology, they also form the content of our mind. But because of the crucial role of feeling and perception, we call them citta sankhara. We do not call the other mental factors like attention and so on, we don't call them citta sankhara. Why? Because of the predominant role of feeling and perception in our behavior, which is the result of the use of our mind. And the mind is a result of functions in accordance with the feelings. So whatever we feel, that we differentiate. And we feel it by holding to the signs of the objects, either objects of pleasant nature or objects of unpleasant nature, or objects that are those touch is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Actually, in some scriptures like the Yiche Shetilun, the nature of the object, the structure of the four elements is directly linked to the experience of feeling. When the touch of the object has smooth qualities, the element of earth and so on have the more quality of the lightness, smoothness. The quality of softness, then we experience the pleasant feeling. When the opposite, we experience the unpleasant feeling. Now, when we experience a very pleasant mental feelings, and the quality of the object, indeed, in the higher spheres of perception, the quality of the object, being purely mental object, becomes very, very smooth, soft. So the feeling becomes of a very subtle nature. So the Buddha explains in many scriptures the process of attaining the liberation as a process of experiencing more and more subtle objects, until the most subtle object that there can be, which is no real object, and that is nirvana. So the process of liberation is experiencing by higher and higher stages of concentration on more and more subtle objects, connected with more and more subtle touch, experiencing when we experience more subtle touch, more subtle sensation, we can detach from a more gross attention. Our mind simply works in this way. Why our mind is always running here and there? Because the grossness of our perception and of our feelings connected with the gross objects. When we get some mental pleasure, then the mind does not want to go anywhere. It is the nature of our mind that it wants to stay where it feels at ease and wants to go away where it does not feel at ease. All creatures, from the grossest to the subtlest, they have this nature. It is the nature of the mind. Why? Because our mind and all our differentiations are defined by our feelings. So when we experience more subtle feeling, we want to stay in these feelings. When we experience the gross feelings, the mind feels not comfortable, so it runs here and runs there. This is the nature of the mind. And that nature we should contemplate and understand. And that nature is also crucial for understanding of the Buddhist psychology and philosophy. Actually, all treatises of Buddhism are speaking the same, explaining the same thing, only in a different way. So the Buddha explains that the more subtle the feeling is, and he explains it by, in a way, the explanation is very contradictory. But it is contradictory for those who do not experience these subtle feelings, but it is not contradictory at all for those who experience them. For example, it is said in the Buddhist theories that when we attain the fourth stage of absorption in the subtle forms, we experience neutral feeling. We do not experience happiness. But the happiness of the fourth dhyana is much more subtle than the happiness of the previous states of absorption. So how to call it? Call it happiness of equanimity. Oh, in the third dhyana we have left happiness. How can there be happiness of equanimity? I do not know. Just experience it and you know. No one can explain. So Buddha explains you go higher when you have some success in vipassana. Then you may experience the highest kind of samadhi experience in the basic Buddhism, which is called the samadhi of no perception and no feeling. Sanya Vedaita Nirodha Samapati, of literally of the samadhi of cessation of that what is to be felt and of perception. But Venerable Sariputta describes it as a most pleasant feeling. Huh? What kind of feeling is that when there is no feeling, no perception? Seemingly there is a contradiction, but for one who has experienced it, there is no contradiction whatsoever. You ask Sariputta, he will explain to you how, I don't know. So, what is very important to see, how crucial this understanding of the feelings is in the process of learning to live a better life, not to speak about the process of liberation, which is maybe for most of us beyond our ability. But the Buddhism has a great use not only for those who want to use it for liberation, it has a great use for those who want to manage their life in a better way. And managing the life in a better way means managing one's feelings in a better way. The concept of suffering in Buddhism is explained by the concept of klesha, from the Sanskrit root klish, which actually means a turbid state, turbidity. It is directly linked actually to the feeling. They are the states of mind connected with turbid feeling. With contradictory feeling. And the very nature of the contradictory feeling is the nature of clinging to the feelings. Our feelings are contradictory because we cling to the feelings. When we do not cling to the feeling, or learn not to cling to the feelings, our feelings will become less and less contradictory. When our feelings become less and less contradictory, we live a more and more fulfilled life. So no matter whether we believe in Buddhism or not, the Buddhist explanation of using the feelings is of great use for all of us. And the importance of feeling, in a way, for those who are interested in Indian philosophy. Not all of us are scholars, but if you are interested in Buddhist philosophy, you may know that actually this crucial role of feeling is not really unique to Buddhism. The Buddha has only explained it in a most skillful and logical way. It is inherent in the whole tradition of the Indian yoga. The sage Kapila and others even before Buddha, they have emphasized the crucial role the feelings play in our experience of the world. Actually, all, even according to the sage Kapila, the legendary master of the Samkhya, which is the philosophy kind of which played a crucial role, maybe even more than Buddhism, in formulating the Indian medicine and Indian general outlook to life. It also explains our bondage in the samsara on the qualities of feelings. So the Buddha, however, he has found with a most complete and comprehensive understanding of the whole training in using the feelings for making the quality of our life better. So, what is the nature of our bondage? According to Buddhism, the nature of our bondage is precisely we are clinging to the pleasant sensation, we repulse the unpleasant sensation, we are struggling to, by force, to remove it. So the whole complex of hate, anger, depression, fear, oppression, it is explained by this complex of patigha, which literally means striking against. If we do not like it, we strike against. Then, if there is nothing really prominent to hold to or to strike against, we get bored. We search desperately for something that will keep our mind in some activity, bringing some pleasant sensation. Buddha saw that this precisely is what keeps us in the state of suffering. So, since our clinging or thirst for feeling, which is explained as in Buddhism as the base for our future suffering. Please kindly switch off the mobile phones for the sake of harmony, which is the base for positive feelings. So, because the thirst, even though our complex of repulsion is cannot be separated from our clinging, it is also expression of our clinging. The thirst, which is explained in Buddhism as a base for future suffering, is linked to pleasant feeling, to pleasant sensation. So the process of using our feelings in a positive way starts usually in the scriptures with the understanding of the undesirable nature of rejoicing at the pleasant feeling, as the pleasant sensation. Because we rejoice at the pleasant sensation, therefore we are, especially if it is unconscious, if it becomes conscious, it's not so bad, because whatever we do consciously, its karmic power will not be great. But that what we do unconsciously, says Buddha, just like when we unconsciously take hot iron in our hands, we will burn ourselves terribly. But when we touch it with knowledge, then we will not burn ourselves terribly, because we know it will burn us. So we always have to contemplate. The Buddha explains the primary cause of suffering being ignorance, and the primary source of happiness being the opposite of ignorance. And ignorance is explained as perverted view, perverted perception, and perverted differentiation. These three things are explained in Buddha's teachings as the root of our ignorance. As long as we have perverted views, perverted perceptions, and perverted differentiations, we find ourselves in the state of ignorance, which is bound with suffering. When we know that, not just conceptually, but through some deeper experience, even so, we may still be subjected to some suffering. It will be not a great suffering, because we are aware, we are mindful. But if we unconsciously hold to the pleasant feelings and identify it with the self and with what belongs to ourselves, we are bound to suffer more and more. So the reduction of suffering is based on the understanding of feelings, how to deal with the feelings, how to deal with our reception of the world through the touch, which is explained in Buddhism as the cause of feeling. No touch, no feeling. So, as long as we have the thirst for the feelings, we are caught in the circle of the future suffering. And our thirst for the feeling is most clearly manifest in the thirst for the pleasant feelings. So rejoicing at the feelings is explained as a thirst, being the cause of future suffering. So the awareness of the feelings, and feelings, according to Buddhism, are the bridge between the object and the mind. That's why this great importance of the feelings. So if we hold to the feelings, to the pleasant feelings, and we are not conscious of this being the cause of our future suffering, then we are bound to all kinds of negative feelings. If we are aware of it, we are cultivating positive feelings. When we cultivate positive feelings, our relations, starting with our spouse, with our children, with our family, with our small society, will then have a much more satisfactory nature, fulfilling nature, and will be connected with subtle feelings, and subtle understanding. These subtle feelings and subtle understanding, the Buddhism explains as love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. When we have them, we are able to benefit the world. So they are the means, especially Northern Buddhism emphasized, as a means of benefiting the world. How do we benefit the world? By the so-called four samgraha vastu, the four bases for collecting beings, for positive acts based on positive feelings. That is giving, the lovable speech, the sameness in regard to others and oneself, and finally of beneficial activities. By these we develop positive relations to the feelings and benefit others. As to the process of the liberation, the penetration of the undesirable nature of clinging to pleasant feelings is of crucial importance. So if we want to go beyond suffering, the first step is to understand this troublesome nature of clinging to the pleasant feelings. According to some scriptures, like Salayatana Vibhanga of the Middle Discourses, then if we have understanding of this troublesome nature of clinging to the pleasant sensation, of rejoicing at the pleasant sensation, we will have naturally a kind of attitude of giving, of rejecting. We reject, in a way, when we reject our pleasant feelings, we are rejecting ourselves. Because we all cling to pleasant feelings, pleasant sensations. So the first analysis is the troublesome nature of the pleasant sensations. Then the next analysis is the troublesome nature of the unpleasant sensation based on repulsion. They will, especially for those who decide to become monks or nuns, and want to train in the path of the middle path leading to liberation, then they will encounter a lot of having rejected or trying to reject the attachment to the pleasant feeling. They will be confronted with a lot of negativity which they see clearly. Unless we practice, we don't see clearly our negativity. When we practice, we start seeing very clearly our negativity. It is very important to contemplate on that. Because when we practice, we become mindful and aware. Mindful and aware of what? Of our turbid emotions, which are the source of our suffering. So we will try to reject them, but it doesn't work. So the next step is to understand the troublesome nature of this rejecting attitude. Then the next step will be finally of not even clinging to the neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensation, and be fed up. This state of being fed up with all clinging to feelings is called atamayata. Just being fed up with clinging to the feelings. And that is explained in Buddha's teachings as actually the content of the liberation. When the mind is not inclined to keep attached, is inclined not to keep attached to the pleasant feeling, it is not fighting against the unpleasant feelings, and it is not deluded in regard to neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings. That mind can go beyond the bondage of suffering. Even so, for most of us, this aim is too far-fetched. We should at least understand that the creating of positive feelings is based on not clinging or not taking too seriously our attachments to feelings, which are caused, if accompanied by ignorance, they are cause of great sufferings due to greed, hate, and delusion. So I will not speak too much. I have been speaking more than 1 hour, and we should finish. I have given just some concepts and some, I hope, some impulse for contemplation about this topic, which will maybe illumine the usefulness of the Buddha's teachings. The usefulness of the Buddha's teachings not only for the sake of going beyond the world, but usefulness of the Buddha's teaching for using the world in a positive way. And using the world in a positive way is using our feelings in a positive way. Practicing love, compassion, joy, and equanimity without attachment. If we can do it on some scale, our relations with our near ones and even with the far ones will improve, and we will be able to benefit ourselves and others, which is the aim of Buddha's teachings. The Buddhism actually does not care much about the metaphysics. Its main concern is just with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Dhammatipa. I think we're now, we'll open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions for the Venerable, you may please raise up your hand. A show of hands, please. Just a piece of information, Venerable Dhammatipa, not only a great Buddhist scholar, he is also a master of Buddhist meditation. So if you have any questions in your practice of meditation, you can also raise up your question to the master.
Hi. Thank you for the speech just now. I'd like to ask, when we talk about overcoming the clinging to the feelings, does it involve only the mental pain, let's say? Are we supposed to be an enlightened person? Should we be able to overcome the physical, the bodily pain as well? Thank you.
The Buddhist teaching is concerned with going beyond the mental suffering. The suffering of the body, not even the Buddha himself could overcome. So not to talk about ourselves. The Buddha also had all kinds of unpleasant bodily feelings. He had back aches. He had stomach aches. He was the human being, and being a human being, we are connected with his body, and this body is will be troublesome at one day or another. But Buddha has gone over the limitations of the mental body. We have two bodies. The body, so-called body of Rupa, which is body in Pali or Sanskrit means actually collection. So we have two collections. That's our world. The collection of so-called physical or formations, and the collection of mental formations. The limitations of the bodily formations, even the Buddha himself as a historical person, the Buddha as the ideal, he has gone over them, but not the Buddha as a historical person. He could not go beyond them because the body is bound. Buddha has always explained very clearly, this body is bound to the suffering of old age and death. No one who has body can avoid it, not even the Buddha himself. But the one who is who has removed ignorance, he can remove the mental suffering. And the whole Buddhist path is meant for that. So the bodily, painful bodily sensations, of course, they are bound to the body, and at one stage or another, even the most realized person cannot avoid them.
Maybe Panadol would be more direct to cure the physical pain. Okay, and anyone, please. Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Can children meditate?
Can children meditate, Master?
So
Can the kids
Children.
do meditation?
yeah, sure, can. Why not?
So the Master say yes. So you need to do it now.
You can
then,
surely
okay.
meditate.
Maybe I can ask a yes. Sorry. That's it. That's your question. Okay. Maybe I can ask a follow-up question according to this question. I think it is a fundamental thing for any Buddhist practitioner. The fundamental thing is doing the meditation to slow down your mind. Start to slow down your mind, and then to feel, really have a real kind of more quiet feeling about the reality. But for any beginners, is how we can slow down our monkey mind, because we know we need to concentrate on our breathe in, breathe out. We know that very well, and we think we can do it, but when we actually doing it, it's kind of hard. So would the master enlighten us, especially the beginner, when our monkey mind start going all over the place? How can we control him, and then to concentrate our mind on the breathe in and breathe out?
Actually, in Buddhism, there is a little bit confusion with the language. In Buddhism, the meditation means simply bhavana, which means from the Sanskrit root bhu, means becoming or cultivation. Anyone can cultivate. So the children, the earlier they start to cultivate, the better. Why not? You should try.
Okay, the master completely ignored my question. The one thing I learned is practice. Okay, there's no shortcut. In meditation, I think the shortcut is patience. Okay. Thank you, Venerable. Okay, and any questions? Yes, the lady behind.
Hi. I'm sorry, I missed part of your talk. You were talking about the subtle feelings of love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and that cultivating these benefit the world. And then you mentioned 4 specific areas to focus on. And of the 4, I only wrote down 1. So I was wondering if you could recap the others.
The Sangrhavastam. The 4 means of collecting the beings for harmony in the world. They are the practice of giving or charity, the practice of kind speech, then the practice of sameness in regard to oneself and others, and the practice of beneficial activity. They will lead to development of positive feelings and to harmony in the world.
Any more questions? Maybe we can take one more. Okay. Yes.
Venerable Amamita, I have a question. I'm a new beginner of practicing Buddhism. I learned about Vipassana. Is it more like try not to differentiate between good and bad feeling?
Pardon, I can't hear you well.
Yes, I can hear, but you can talk loudly.
Okay, when I have encountered Vipassana, which means you try not to avoid, you scan through your body and try not to differentiate between positive and negative feeling. And I also heard about breathing in, breathing out. So I don't know which one to go for, or should I practice both, and then how to develop the compassionate and love.
We don't have enough time for that. But what you have practiced is probably the Goenka system of meditation, right? It is based on, it is one of the many methods of Vipassana. In Buddhism, in so-called basic Buddhism, there are 2 main methods of Vipassana. The one is centered on the understanding of feelings, as you find, for example, in Adita, Sutanta, in Samyutta Nikaya. You can study the whole world is burning by the pleasant sensation, unpleasant sensation, nice or pleasant, never mind. Some of us are scholars, some not, so if we are not scholars, forget about it, it's not important. And others, they concern with the analysis of the 5 aggregates of existence, being the form, the feelings, the perceptions, the will formations, and consciousness. So this method emphasizes the meditation on the feelings. of the correct understanding of the feelings. It is also very useful, no doubt, and if you do it, it will help. So please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Venerable. When we go to a master's teaching section, if you open your ear, you'll be able to receive insight by the master's words. But if you also open your heart, that you will gain insight and positive energy directly from the master's heart. In case you only open your ear today, and you want to try to also open your heart to experience the direct teaching, then you will have another chance, okay? On the January 25th, the Venerable Dhammadippa will come back to this university and conduct a teaching session titled Facing Illness with Compassion. So it's a seminar meant for the healthcare professionals. Of course, you're all welcome to come to join. For details, please visit the Center of Buddhist Studies website. So next time, you can also open up all your sixth sense to try to receive teachings directly from the Master's heart. That's beyond language. And in order to express our gratitude to the Master, we don't clap our hands today, but we try to use the sign language, which is like this, so to maintain the harmony. So let's do.
Okay.
And Venerable, we have some worldly business to need to be taken care of. The Venerable Hin Hong, we on behalf of all of us to present you a gift. I know you don't need gift, but this is just a drama, okay? To somehow to show our appreciation. The Venerable Hin Hong, please. And to present a souvenir is a token of appreciation to the Venerable for his very profound teaching to all of us tonight. Yeah, we got two. So Venerable, if you don't need, you can give it us back. Okay, recycle again. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding as the Venerable will depart from the lecture hall now.